Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to start with our Baroque piece. I'm going to start with some of the lighter areas. So I'm going to start with these peaches. I personally prefer to start with the lighter areas of the painting, simply because it is very easy to get too into your dark areas, and then when they encroach on the light areas, especially with our paints, I find them harder to cover up. So it's much easier, I think, if you start with the lighter areas of the painting. So we're going to start with our several peaches here. Now, if we take a look at the tone of the peaches, we can see that there are yellow areas, there are orangey areas, there are reddish areas, and there are actually some brown areas. One of the things about Baroque shadows that is very, very interesting is that it is rarely just a pure black shadow. It's often a very deep, deep brown that is mixed with quite a lot of black. And what that does is it adds a richness to the shadow so that it doesn't look flat. So on my palette paper here, I have some yellow, I have some orange, a tiny bit of red. Now, as a reminder, your red may look a bit more on the pink side. It may have more of a magenta lean to it. That's totally fine, that happens. Some students have also mentioned to me that sometimes their black has a brown tinge to it, and we do know that that is true. It is something that we take into consideration when we look at your work. I also have some white, and while I think on camera this is reading as black, this is actually my brown. Okay, so I'm going to put those off to the side. One of the things that we need to remember about our paint in particular is the yellow is very transparent, and so it does take some time to build up that color, and really going over some of these a couple of times is going to be necessary. So I've got a again, you guys know I happen to love my flat brushes, so I'm actually going to start with a flat brush, and I'm going to do a yellow wash. I also have paper towel over here, as well as like that old well-loved microfiber cleaning cloth that I am going to use. Here, so I've got a damp brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow, and I'm going to start with this peach in particular. Whenever you're working, you should either have the picture up on your screen, or if you do have a printed copy, you should also have the printed copy next to you. We don't ever want to work from our memory. Our memory is very faulty. So I am just going in with that straight yellow here, just to get a layer down. You will need to mix your colors the majority of the time, but I just wanted to get a little color down. I did change my camera angle so that you guys weren't looking at my hand the whole time as I did this. Now you may find that as you're doing this, some of the pencil is pulling into your paint. That's fine. It'll eventually all even out, because this is just our first layer. And again, this is really kind of a wash. And as a reminder, you did not have to tint your background. That was just something optional. So if you're working from a white canvas, the process is still the same. And I'm just going to go ahead and, you see when I pull that paint over that pencil, because our yellow is so opaque and transparent, we can still see through it. Now, as a reminder, acrylic paint dries very quickly. I think you guys have all learned that now from your previous project. So now I'm going to grab a little white. I'm not even going to clean my brush here, and I'm going to start to add a little brightness here. See, that white is pulling up the opacity. We're starting to lose our pencil line. we don't want to go too far with losing some of our lines just yet, but I am just trying to build that up a little bit. So when we look on our picture, we can see that this has sort of a yellow, light orange sort of tinge to it. So that's where we're going to move next. Let's see. So in order to do that, I am going to drop my paintbrush off camera just so that you guys can hear the delightful sound of something hitting my tabletop. I have some of those toothpicks. Again, this is optional, but if you do have the toothpicks, you can use them, or if you have one of those plastic spoons or knives from the carryout, I highly recommend that. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of our yellow here, and then I'm going to grab just a tiny bit of the orange, because orange is going to be a stronger color, and then I'm going to grab some of that white. Maybe that's a bit too much. And then I'm just going to give this a little mix. On our palette. Now if I were to take my paper, I can see it's maybe a bit too bright, so I think I need a little bit more of that white in there. So I'm going to grab a little bit more. This is all about creating a balancing act. And again, we are going for close, not perfection. One of the things that we have to remember is that this is a photograph of a painting that was printed on our printers. And so there's a lot of ways that color can shift and focus. And I bet you if you were to take this and go look at this painting in particular, some of the colors may look a little different. So the idea here is close, not perfection. So if I take my toothpick again and I put it over, that's getting fairly close. If I got a little drop on there, and that is pretty spot on. So now this is still drying here, but I am going to go ahead and take a little bit of that color, and I'm going to start to pull that shape in. Now again, this is a process of layers, and I'm looking at my referencing painting as I'm doing this, and I actually think that I probably need to wait here and let that dry a little bit more before I come back in. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to go ahead and start to build up some of this other tone here, these other peaches. And all I'm doing at this point is getting just a wash of color down. And I'm grabbing a little bit of the white and the yellow together. I haven't actually mixed a light yellow at this point. And then the reason I'm doing that is I kind of like this subtle variation that's happening depending on where things are happening. Again, this is a first wash. This by no means is the end of our painting. Baroque painting is about smooth, beautiful transitions, and those smooth, beautiful transitions take time. So at this point, I'm going to let this dry And then I will come back and start to build up some of those colors as we move forward.